Hello there, I'm Adam Forbes. I am the author of the Corporate Escapology book and the host of the Corporate Escapology podcast. Today, my guest is Nicole Higgins. Nicole has had a really interesting career as a buyer for many of the high street brands that you and I have grown up with. Debenhams, Marks & Spencer, Primark, and a whole host of others. But in 2019, she decided she wanted a bit more from her life than just working for one employer. So she set up the Buyer and Retail Coach, a consultancy and coaching business where she helps both smaller organizations wanting to develop and launch new products and bigger organizations that maybe want some expertise on a fractional basis. And she carried on working as on a contract basis. In fact, ended up becoming head of a buying department to George at ASDA. And so carried on earning income during the time that she was building her business. But now she stepped away from the corporate work and she's offering her services as the buyer and retail coach to lots of different businesses. One of the things you really pick up is this sense of variety, but it's only because of the incredible experience, the brands, the track record that she built during all of those career engagements for the big retail brands that we all know. So let's meet Nicole now. Great. Hey, Nicole, thanks so much for joining me today on the Corporate Escapology podcast. It's great to have you with me today.
I am very excited to be here. I don't do many podcasts, so I'm even though I host a lot, but I'm not a guest on many.
I am pleased, but I did see how many you'd done, and it did make me worry about the quality of my own. So I feel like I'm going to try to up my game on this one. But what I'm really interested in talking to you about is your buying background. You know, I'd spent a long time, maybe 10 years working at John Lewis off and on, and buying was always like the spot everyone wanted to be at. You know, no one wanted to really be working on the shop floor on the Saturday or the weekends, but buying was like the dream job. So was it always a dream job for you? Had you sort of planned to go that route from school and college and beyond?
Well, I was in school in Ireland, and to be honest, the careers education in Ireland was very much, you could be a doctor, you could be an accountant, you can be a nurse. And a very specific job titles and roles. So I didn't really know that kind of career existed. I did start working on the shop floor in retail when I was 16, still at school, you know, and throughout. And then when it came to doing the Leaving Cert, which is in Ireland's equivalent to the A-levels, I initially went to university in Ireland and studied arts and English and psychology and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, what am I doing when I want to work in retail? So then I changed universities, came over to the UK and studied fashion design and marketing in the UK, knowing then that I wanted to do something within that field and that scope. And then while I was at uni, I tried different things and on placement and work experience. So I worked in visual merchandising. I continued to work on the shop floor while I was at uni for companies like Diesel and another company called Strand, which was high end. And so did PR, did visual merchandising, and did journalism actually as well. So all like different kind of work experience, but wanted something that was commercial and creative at the same time and merged those two. And that's then how I found buying and applied to where I started working. I started my career then at Debenhams as a buyer's admin assistant.
But Debenhams was a big brand to be working for straight off. What was that like coming in from university to work for this big company, very well known? I mean, everybody would know. Pretty much every high street had a Debenhams, didn't it, at one stage?
No, Debenhams was great, and it was a great place to start my career because of the structure in the business, the steps for graduates or, you know, new employees, and the training that I received as a buyer's admin at the time. And what I was exposed to as well and what I was involved in. So it was a great grounding for a buying career, and was very much known for that. Like Debenhams, M&S would have been very much known for that in the industry of graduate buying programs and how well they trained, you know, their employees from that junior level up.
Yeah, M&S as well. I think I said to you, my wife was at M&S as a buyer, and she had that exact same experience too. And later on she wanted to go and work for Jigsaw, and I think it would only really have been an opportunity to work for Jigsaw had she worked at, got that training at M&S. That made her quite valuable. And I guess in a way, that's really what I'm trying to do with Corporate Escapologists, recognize that value that you've gained from working for that big brand and get that training in there too, and the track record that you build. And also the scale. I mean, you were buying on a scale that was much, much greater than if you'd worked in a really small retailer at that time. How long did you stay at Debenhams, and what was pushing you on to do more and go to other places? What kind of experiences were you after at the time?
So I think I was at Debenhams for about 2.5 years, and like I said, it was a great place to start my career, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it as a business. But the reason that I wanted to leave was they had put a recruitment freeze on, and I had, gone quickly through the levels that I needed to go through as a buyer's admin, and I was like chomping at the bit to be an assistant buyer, which would have been the next level. And there was a recruitment freeze, and so I kind of waited for that recruitment freeze to hopefully pass, but it was like 6 months later, still recruitment freeze hadn't passed. Oh, wow. So I started looking at other options. And I think is what, when you're younger, and because I had started, I suppose, my career a little bit later, because I'd done that time in Ireland at university and then gone, hang on a second, I'll go. I was a little bit older than some of the others as well anyway. And I was just like, right, I want to just keep on moving. I don't want to wait for anyone. So I was quite impatient. And so then opportunity came up at Warehouse, so which is unfortunate. No, it's still with us, but it's obviously left the high street. But so I moved. I got promoted. That was the reason for me when I left Debenhams, it was for a promotion and slightly more money at the time as well. So I went on to work at Warehouse as an assistant buyer there.
So you got that kind of like recognition as well at that point of that assistant buyer job that you'd been looking for, as well as some money. Nice. And from there you moved on again, because I can see lots of other brands that you worked for.
Yeah. So from a personal point of view, so I met my husband when I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband, in Yorkshire, which is where I went to university. So while I'm in London, he's in Yorkshire. And so we're having this long distance relationship. And also from a family point of view, my father tragically passed away while I was working at Warehouse. So I was living in London. My mum was on her own in Ireland. My husband was in Yorkshire, or my boyfriend was in Yorkshire. And I was like, right, well, I don't feel I can split myself between these three places. Maybe I should go and live in Yorkshire for a while and see if this relationship is actually going to last, or, basically, if I can say it, shit or get off the pot, essentially. Yeah. And so then, I relocated back up north, and I'm still with my boyfriend, who is now my husband, and we've been together 23 years. But I think with that, I went to work for Marché. Yeah. I went to work for Marché, which is a completely different business. The reason I went there, it was literally 2 miles from where I lived. And also it was pay rise again, and it was working on still clothing, but it was great for there. I mean, that's where I got promoted to buyer. I started traveling to the Far East and sourcing, and all of that from there, and then went back to bigger businesses again. So after I worked for a company called Moda and Pele, which is a small footwear business. They went through a restructure. So from then I was made redundant, which happens to lots of people in the fashion and retail business, because it's quite a volatile industry. And so I had a time to take a step back a bit after that and think about what do I want, where do I want to be, what companies do I want to work for. So went back to London to M&S after that. During that time I was kind of looking for work, probably period about 6 months, but also I had my first taste of entrepreneurship. There was a company that was going bust, and it was a kids wear company, and they had all this stock. So I bought like 1,200 pairs of kids shoes and was selling them on eBay while I was looking for work.
Really?
So I had money coming in, and I was like selling them on eBay, had them all in my kitchen and in the garage. Like, there's 1,200 pairs, it takes up a lot of space. And Yeah, my husband was just like, Carl was just like, oh my
Go
God,
to
when are we
London,
going to get rid
get
of these
away.
things? Yeah, yeah. But so yeah, I sold through all of those, and just as I kind of sold through all of those, the opportunity with M&S came up, which was
Ah.
initially a contract position, a maternity contract cover, but I ended up there kind of, I think, about just over 2.5 years. Um, Again, like working on men's accessories, kids footwear and accessories. Brilliant company to work for. Was traveling the world with them, going to see lots of factories. Um, again, lots of training, but at a different level. It was more managerial training and leadership training. So got exposed to working on lots of different, a lot of collaborations across departments, and traveling the world, sourcing product from a factory point of view, but also like shopping trips. And for people who don't know what buying job is, you're essentially sourcing and developing product from all over the world to bring to your to bring to your stores so that your customers can buy it. So understanding what your customer wants, and to understand that, you need to go and kind of do the shop, see the competition. And so I was going to New York, to LA, to Europe to see what other retailers were doing and getting ideas and inspiration. So yeah, no, that I absolutely loved M&S. But then,
What a job. That's right.
yeah, no, it
Grammar
really,
there is great, isn't it? Because, but the mix too. Because I remember Meg saying as well, she would like do these comp trips or whatever, comp shopping or whatever on the high street. But then she'd go to New York and Milan and other places. But then to also go to Egypt to see the sourcing and check out some of the kind of the suppliers, and China. I mean, what an opportunity for somebody, and actually quite a lot of power. She also say she'd go to these big conferences or shows or whatever, and you would be like a real kingpin because you're M&S walking around. I mean, it was a great experience. I mean, she speaks so kind of nostalgically about that experience at
like that.
M&S. Is a big
Yeah, no, I
global
did. I
player.
absolutely loved it. Yeah, I absolutely loved, and I really enjoyed being a buyer and working for those companies. And like after M&S, then I worked with Primark. And that was I had always in the back of my mind thought, will I go back? Because I'm from Ireland. I was like, will I go back and work in Ireland? When am I ready to do that? Because I felt that if I went back to Ireland, I then wouldn't leave. And in Ireland, the retail market's much, much smaller of who you can work for. And so I think it was 2011 then that I went back and worked for Primark. And again, that was, they took really good care of me financially. So in terms of the
Well, you were a
setup
real
and
catch
getting
by
me
then, I
over,
guess.
and
You,
I'm still a
sorry.
cat.
So,
No,
well, you must. You were a real catch. I mean, like lots and lots of experience, but then M&S on the CV. I mean, that's pretty attractive to Primark. I think they must have done a lot of recruiting from
yeah,
these companies that because of the training and the experience and exposure, and particularly, I guess Primark maybe around that time was worrying a little bit about the ethics, some of the ethical challenges in retail and the supply chains, and M&S was so hot on that there's a lot to kind of learn from what M&S was doing well.
yeah, and I think also from its structure and its training of its teams, training of its buyers. But Primark was very, and yeah, I don't know whether it still is, but it was very entrepreneurial in how the buyers worked, and there was a lot of autonomy that the buyers had. And for me, it was really refreshing because when you come from M&S, there's a lot of red tape, and you've got 50 million meetings to sign a product off, and that kind of thing. Whereas Primark was very much, the way I felt and the way I treated it and the way my line managers allowed me to treat it was as if it was my own business. And this is why we've got this money. This is working really well. We're going to go more after that. The pace was very, very quick. And so, yeah, I stayed there. I stayed there for about 5.5 years. Absolutely loved it. Had two
Wow.
kids, whilst I was working there, and had the opportunity to work on great departments, and starting health and beauty and growing that. And so for me, like I said, I really enjoyed it. The people were great, a lot of autonomy. I would have stayed in Ireland, to be honest, and I probably would have stayed with Primark, but all this time, my husband's still in the UK. So we're doing long distance, even with 2 kids. I've got the 2 kids in Ireland and he's, and he's in the UK having a jolly. No. Yeah, I'm working full-time high pressure job in Ireland, and he works for himself. So he was like coming back and forth then. But the main reason that I left them Primark was more logistic and personal reasons. My eldest was starting school. We were renting in Ireland. We owned property in the UK. So financially and logistically, it didn't make sense to still be in Ireland, so then I relocated back and actually went back to Marché, which again, like I said, is 2 miles up the road. It was to kind of revamp one of their departments and started working for them. And this is probably when I started thinking about, what do I want my future to look like? What do I want to stay on this wheel, because the company I was in, it wasn't particularly a company that I would want to stay in. And in my mind, I was like, right, okay, well, I want to get to a certain level. I want to get to head of buying level. But what do I want after that? So yeah, I went to actually see someone. I don't know whether she was a coach, business type coach, and we did this exercise, and it's a really useful exercise to do, really. And it's just thinking about, what do you want to be, do, and have, over a certain period of time. So, what do you want to be, do, and have in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years, 5 years, whichever it might be. Okay. And so I looked at the short, medium, and long term. And if I continued doing what I was doing in the short term, I wouldn't have been able to get to what I wanted to get to in the long term, So on that, when we did that exercise, I knew I wanted to become a head of buying. I wanted to earn a certain amount of money, but then I wanted more freedom. I wanted to be able to have a house in Ibiza and work flexibly, And if I continued working in corporate, and this is before COVID. So if I continued working in corporate, I wasn't going to have that flexibility to do those things. So then it was 2019, and there were changes with Marché. So I stopped working for them in May 2019, and then started to kind of look at, right, what do I want? Like I said, what do I want my future to look like? What do I want to do? And I was a really hard worker and felt, right, if I can put the effort into my own business that I put into everybody else's business, then, something good is going to happen. And I started to look at, there were a couple of people. There's a company in the States, there's a woman in the States, there's a few people in the UK who were doing what I wanted to do, which was helping small businesses start and grow. And I felt that I could work with small businesses to help them get their ideas off the ground from a product point of view, or go in as a like project manager or ad hoc support to larger businesses, but just for a short period of time. So during that time, I did a project management qualification. I set up the website. I set up the Buy and Retail Coach, which is a coaching and consultancy business. But I was always still looking at, okay, I want to get a contract. I said I want to get a contract retail role as well, just to help supplement the income. So I kind of started the Buy and Retail Coach as a side hustle. And so in September of 2019, I started working for ASDA as their buying manager on lingerie, but 4 days a week. And they knew I had started the Buy and Retail Coach, so I didn't have to hide anything. I was working 4 days a week for them in a senior role, and then in the evenings and my 1 day a week, I was working on the coaching and consultancy business and building that on social media and building that with clients as well. So that was how I was able to manage both, was by taking on that contract role. But then COVID hit in 2020, and I couldn't homeschool, do a senior role at that stage as well. I ticked off one of the things. I had been promoted to head of buying at ASDA. And so I couldn't, do homeschool, do the buy and retail coach, and do the corporate role. So I kind of sidelined the buy and retail coach to focus on the kids homeschooling and the corporate role, and then just kept existing clients. Didn't grow that the coaching consultancy business, kept it as it was, kept the existing clients. But there's only so much that you can there's only so many plates you can spin.
I know. There seems quite a lot already. So did the ASDA one become a job, or did you always keep that contract?
It was contract.
So that you kept
contract.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah. And I think, I went into it knowing I started that job when I had the buy and retail business, and I was fully transparent with them, the buy and retail coach, and was fully transparent with them and said, I've also got this. I won't take on any clients that are in conflict of interest. I won't be working with any big clients that, I won't take on any big clients that are conflict of interest, and it just made it, I just wanted to be very upfront so that I didn't have to hide anything,
Yeah, that's great advice, I think, for people to hear as well. Tell me as well, what was it that, so a lot of people worry about going contract or certainly going down in days. What was it that ASDA saw in you, do you think, that they felt like they wanted to take you rather than somebody else, or another employee that they could bring up and train or whatever? What was it specifically, do you think, that they got with you?
I've got a bit of a track record of coming in, solving problems quite quickly and very much from a strategy point of view, and growing departments. So there were a few things that they wanted to change and do, and potential on the departments that I was working for, that they wanted to speed up the process with. And at that stage, I'd worked with quite a lot of businesses, done quite a lot, managed a lot of big budget departments.
Yeah.
And, and I think from the conversations, they wanted someone that had a bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset, but that had worked in a corporate structure.
And what kind of duration contract was that as well that you had, with what kind of notice period?
So when I first started with them, I was buying manager on lingerie, and that was, I think, a 9-month contract, but that got extended. And then the head of buying one was a 6-month contract, but that got extended then as well. Yeah. And to October 22.
What kind of notice did you have, to remember? Like, was it just a month's notice or? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested particularly because I think it's one of the things that people worry about when, when they leave the supposed security of a job, which isn't always that secure, to go to something like contract work. Actually, you can find these reasonably long duration contracts that in many ways aren't that dissimilar to a job.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I wanted to have more control of what I was doing as well, and where I was going, I suppose. No, I think so. It's like when I started working for M&S, that was initially a 3-month contract. I ended up being there over 2 years. So I think once you get into a business, there might be less so now, but once you get into a business, if you're good, you show what you can do, there's always opportunity, because they don't want to, they've spent money trying to recruit people. They don't want to then lose them. So there's always opportunities within that business.
And I think as well, they're lazy as well. They're lazy. If there's somebody that is good enough, especially if they can just give them a bit of coaching development, they will usually pick the people close to them, because it's a risk recruitment, isn't it? I mean, yeah, okay, we might turn this down, but the next best alternative might turn out not to be as good. So if they've got somebody in there that's proving themselves, I mean, that's surely, better the devil you know, even if you don't always like that devil. So I think that's one of those, I think, in a way, is it's a much fairer, balanced way of working as well, because it's not kind of tighter, we have to have you like an employee. You're both kind of choosing one another, which I think makes the relationship just fairer and more transparent, it's just a practical relationship. I got some work that needs doing. Here, you can do it. Brilliant. Go off and do it. I don't have to think about the whole kind of development and long-term plans and succession and all these other things that go with managing people. I mean, it's quite a lot of effort for managers to deal with staff. So a contractor coming in can often be very appealing.
Yeah. I mean, and I had teams that I was looking after and had to develop them and everything. But in terms of, I just came in and got on with the role that I needed to do. But I do think that, like you say, in terms of, it's like you choose each other and you're very aware of, right, it's for this long. It could be longer. I might start looking for something else at this point, but I'll have the conversation with them then. And I think it's a bit more, no job is secure. But I mean, the industry that I, worked in as well, retail and fashion, it can be very volatile, lots of redundancies, and recruitment freezes and that kind of thing. Whereas if you just, depending on where you are financially and what your position is, you work the contract, you move on to another contract if that's what you want to do. Or you like the business, say, I'd like to stay. Do you have any other contract work? I got to the point I didn't want to be full-time employed. There were full-time positions out there, but I didn't want to do that because in my mind, I knew if I had a full-time role, I would have to let the bar and retail coach go.
So one of the things that is different from you and me and many of the other people that I've spoken to is you did move around a lot. And my hypothesis about people that move around more is that they keep their confidence higher because they're being tested much more frequently and they get a sense of their value outside of that job. Whereas somebody like me that spent a long time in one company, I think there was a very sort of gradual erosion of confidence and a lack of self-belief, really, that I was worth something outside of that company. I knew I was worth something in the company. I felt quite confident there, but the idea of the outside world started to become quite scary. And I felt like it was better to stay here and be kind of grateful that I've got this job because it might not be so good elsewhere. Whereas you'd proved to yourself multiple times that you were worth something. Others really valued that. And I'm interested, were you conscious of that feeling that, you knew that you were valuable here because others had selected you, and so why would somebody else, if something the sky falls in, why would somebody else not select you too?
Yeah, and I think you get comfortable, or you're more aware of what your strengths are because the results that you've got in other businesses, and and like you say, people have chosen you to work for them. So you're more aware, I think, of what your strengths are, and because you're tested more. Whereas if you stay in one company, you can get more complacent. There might not be as much coaching on offer because you've been there for a while. So they probably feel, oh, you know everything that you need to know. So we're not going to, we're not going to offer this to you, or that might not be available to you. And I also think when you move around more, there's other opportunities out there because you've already been able to get them. I think when you stay, and I don't know because I stayed in Primark for 5 years, but I think when you stay somewhere so long, it's such a huge part of your identity that maybe you don't know what you would be without them or who you'd be without them.
Yeah. I think, we do hold these other companies on a bit of a pedestal sometimes. And going inside, you realize they're just people. They're doing their best sometimes. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're not good. You bring different things to those experiences. And I think, going into the contract thing, that my experience from doing the same is it does feel a healthier relationship. It does feel like both sides are opting into this relationship rather than, there's been a restructure. You've got me, whether you want me or not. Here I am. I'm the guy that's been here for 16 years now and has been slotted into your team through this restructure. And, nobody's really very excited about the relationship. I had that quite a few times in BP. And, and whereas now people can say, no, thanks, we've had enough of you. And I can do the same. And that is actually very, very, very motivating, actually. It makes me work harder sometimes when I think, actually, I really do want you to to want me because I like this work and it's good for me, or maybe I need it financially this month or this quarter or something. But so it makes me, I think, a better, more valuable resource to them. Right. Then the other thing I was gonna that I was observing as you were talking was this kind of key moment when you took that step back with that coach and looked, projected forward and looked to say, actually, am I on track? Am I going in the right? Are these options that I'm looking at leading me into that right, to the direction that I want or not? And that then, I guess, was a useful frame for you to be considering options like that ASDA one, but also making sure that you kept the buyer and retail coach going alongside it rather than give it all up because COVID's hit and you've got this big job and the kids are at home and, but because you had this eye on where you wanted to be in this future. So it was this really key moment of stepping back outside of the day-to-day, which must have been also pretty intense with a couple of kids and big jobs, and say, where am I going? And set yourself up then for the next 10 or maybe 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was 10 or 20 years, probably maybe 3 or 5 years. I don't think I could see that far into the future. Okay. But, and then while I was still working at ASDA, because I was able to still be visible and doing the buyer retail coach, I was being asked to speak at retail events. I had clients that I was working with, but not taking on new clients for most of the time. And so I was being able to be part of that world and grow that side of things, as much as I could while I was still, like I said, still kind of doing it as a side hustle, essentially, to a corporate role. And, but yeah, I think for anyone that's listening, it's grab a piece of paper and just put 3 columns and be like, be, do, and have. What do you want to be, what do you want to do, and what do you want to have? Like, what do you want your life to look like? And look at that short, middle, and long term, whether that's 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, or 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. And if what you want in 5 years is never going to happen because of what you're doing and having in your 12 and 2 years, then you need to relook at how are you going to make that shift and what can you do? And you can do it, like I said, you can do it gradually and you can implement things. When I was working for ASDA, the contract finished in 2020 and they said to me, we're making different structures. They were like, so I had become head of buying and they were like, okay, well, the head of buying is coming back from mat leave or whatever it might be. Would you take buying manager role? So that was a step back. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to say no. So I think it's always important to kind of, again, step back and go, when is the right time to say no to things? And I'm going to focus now fully on the coaching and consultancy business. So I said no to another contract role and then said, right, okay, I'm going to go all in then on coaching and consultancy and take that seriously, I suppose, and start that fully, working on that full time.
I mean, one of the great things I love about your story is you didn't do it as a switch. You'd started it a bit, then the ASDA thinking you kept it going. So it wasn't a case of, right, finding yourself on Monday morning, right, I've got to invent this business. Yeah. But what was going through your mind around what is this business?
Well, I was looking at who's my ideal client? Who do I want to serve, essentially? What are my income streams going to be? And what can I do, And so that's kind of what I looked at and also looked at, right, okay, if I want to make my corporate salary, what do the offers need to be? How many clients do I need to see to make that? And where, is that feasible in year 1, year 2, or where can the other income streams come from? And I think one of the things that makes me different to some other people that are out there that do something similar is when I worked as a buyer, I bought multi-product. And I've sourced from, so many different countries, but I bought bras, I bought beauty, I bought nightwear, I bought clothing. Whereas some other coaches that help people start product businesses are very much fashion focused. Whereas I've done homewares, I've really done a broad range of product types. So that's how I was different.
And how are you finding the work? How do you find the clients? Is it your network that you're finding it from? Are people reaching out to you because of your experience and track record? Do websites work?
Yeah,
This sort of stuff, is it social media?
But you know, I haven't updated my website since 2019. I'm actually on that at the moment,
So it's
changing
not
the
the
copy
website.
into different things. No, sorry, I don't think it is the website. But social media definitely, referrals and referrals from past clients, social media. And then I have a podcast as well called Start, Scale, Succeed, where I interview entrepreneurs or experts that help product businesses, or that help like inspire, motivate, or empower product businesses in some way. So I interview mostly with guests. I do some solo episodes as well, but I've found some clients have found me that way because they've been listening to the podcast, and you know, it takes time to get to trust someone, but they're hearing you talking, and I have some people go, I've just listened to you all week, or I've listened, and then they come and contact me to work with me. So yeah, the podcast and social media and referrals, yeah, would be the way that people are finding me, I think, at the moment. Yeah, and I made a conscious effort from when I started working with people, was always asking for testimonials.
Okay.
So I've got a really good bank of testimonials. So if some video ones, some written ones, and it's just part of my offboarding process. When I stop working with them, I send them a form to fill in for feedback and testimonials. And
right, okay, that's a good tip.
It's just,
but before we end, I just wanted to just touch on Joyist, which is something sort of more recent than the buy and retail coach. So what's that? How does that fit with it? Why do you want to do this as well as the coaching consultancy?
So Joyist is a B2B corporate gifting business and corporate and merchandise business. So it's got 3 strands to it. And the reason it came about is I've been to many events where you've got crap merchandise that you just basically come home from it, and the kids, you just palm it all off on the kids, or it goes in the bin. I've also worked with clients that need support bringing product in, and the way it came about was I joined a high ticket coaching program, and the welcome for the price of the program and the welcome gift, they were just like, that's fairly shit, to be, versus what the actual price of the program was. And when I was in with them enough, I in more or less words, I said, this is what you should be doing. It should be this kind of spec, this kind of, and I branded it all up, and I did a pitch to them because I knew this is kind of thing that yeah. And they were like, I said, anything to do with product, I can get for you. I can source it. I can do it bespoke. We can buy off the shelf and brand it. Whichever you want to do, we can do. So that's kind of how it came about. So it's got, Joyce has 3 different pillars. It's you can do branded merchandise, you can do co-branded product, or you can do bespoke product. So with one of the clients I've worked with, they do all 3. My intention is trying to automate the buy and retail coach a little bit more, have more coaching programs, so that then I can spend more time on Joyous and grow that, because that's a business that can very, very much scale and maybe in the future be sold or whatever. I don't know. I think it keeps me busy.
It's so exciting to have all the variety. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think for me, that is one of the big benefits.
Yeah, when you're working for yourself, it allows you to have the space, not often, not all the time, but, it's letting your brain breathe, what are the opportunities, and when you are working for yourself and you surround yourself more with entrepreneurs and seeing other people's businesses grow and how they've grown it, that you see more the art of the possible, and why can't you do that too? You're removing limits on yourself because there's other people just like you that have done it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That's an excellent way to end this, because that's, I think, exactly it. That buying that space, but then surrounding yourself with the right people that are inspiring you, challenging you, role modeling what you could do as well. It's just, that is the opportunity here. Where if you've crammed your whole day, well, you've done it. We've both done it. Crammed your whole day with one employer, particularly one that you're building a career with, so it's more than just the day-to-day of the job, you just don't have that capacity to do that kind of thinking. Even the people that do side hustles, I have massive admiration for them, because it's so hard when you're also juggling family and a job like that, and the exhaustion of doing all of those things too. So this is a route to, just find what and follow what, what excites you, what interests you, what.
Anyone who says that when you work for yourself, you'll be working less. You aren't, particularly when you're building something, but you're working more flexibly. It doesn't feel as much like work, because it's for yourself. Everything you do, your input, what you output, you will get back in, eventually. And, from a time and energy point of view, and there'll be a lot of people listening that have worked in corporate jobs for like 10, 15, 20 years. You've learned loads of skills. You've got loads of transferable skills. No, if you leave a job and you start something and it doesn't work out, those skills haven't gone. You can go back into the workplace if you need to for a short period of time on contract jobs, fractional working, or whatever it might be, while you're still then building something. What's worth is looking back and going, I wish I'd done it, and I think, like I said, looking at that be, do, have exercise and go, is the life you want in 5 years' time? What are you doing now to help build that life? Because if you're not doing anything now to build that life, you're not going to have that life you want in 5 years' time.
Great, Nicole. I have so enjoyed it talking to you, and I have been inspired by you, and you've given me lots of tips from my own business. So I'm extremely grateful on multiple levels. I feel like I've had a good coaching session with you too. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Anna, for having me.